Interesting slate for tonight in MLB DFS because we got three different stud pitchers available for tonight. We got Kenta Maeda, Kyle Hendricks, and Tyler Glasnow. And two of those guys are in elite matchups for DFS, arguably the two best matchups you could possibly have. So we've got to decide which of these guys we want to put at the top of our list, which one may fly in as a really good tournament option. It's a tough decision to make, so let's dive on in and break it down. Welcome on in to the Solo Shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Wednesday night's 8-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 this evening. If you look at the slate for tonight, every game except for the Giants versus the Rockies has a temperature in the 70-degree range. That is optimal for us for DFS because we don't want to have huge discrepancies and have to totally alter our approach for the weather. For tonight, we don't have to. The San Francisco game is at 63 right now, as always. So we should keep most park factors pretty neutral for tonight, with that being the case. I don't think there's a huge advantage, a huge great park to stack, and there aren't any huge negatives. And we're actually in a stack in San Francisco, so it is a roller coaster for today for sure. We're going to break down those pitching dilemmas here in just 1 second. But first, another week of the NFL season is down means another millionaire made as a result of FanDuel's biggest NFL tournament, the Sunday Million. If you missed out on the first 2 weeks of the season, do not worry. The stage is set for you to play for a big payday in Week 3. For just $4.44, you can enter the Week 3 NFL Sunday Million and compete for your share of the $2.75 million prize pool, including a $1 million first place prize. With 13 games on the slate and superstars like Russell Wilson, Zeke Elliott, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, there is no shortage of big-name fantasy players to build your lineups around. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. We take an early look at the Week 3 slate and our Week 2 recap podcast that is posted right now on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and on the FanDuel YouTube page. We also took a look at the Corrales Punta Cana for PGA DFS. That was me and Brandon breaking down that one. That is also posted on the DFS feed and on the FanDuel YouTube page. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page, recording the Week 3 preview podcast tomorrow at 10 a.m. there. And also check out the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review. Pitching preview for this Wednesday main slate. Kyle Hendricks is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel. He checks in at $10,600, followed by Tyler Glasnow at $10,300. Kenta Maeda is $10,000. Max Fried is $9,100. Sixto Sanchez is facing Max Fried. Nathan Eovaldi, and Dean Kramer are the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, I think that the top two pitchers for tonight are going to be Kyle Hendricks and Kenta Maeda. And the reason for that is because their matchups are so much better than Tyler Glasnow's. I still think Tyler Glasnow is a tremendous tournament option. We're going to talk about him in things to watch because for cash games, it's Kenta versus Kyle for that top spot. They are both in elite matchups, and they just score their FanDuel points in very different manners. So I'm going to go through both these guys here in our pitching preview, starting off with Kenta because I think he is slightly higher on my list, but these two guys are both amazing options. Maeda is facing the Tigers at home. That's a bingo. It is an elite matchup for DFS. They have an 81 WRC plus against righties, but the bigger allure is their 28% strikeout rate with a 7% walk rate. It does not get any better than that. I could not pick a better team for a right-handed pitcher to face for DFS, and Maeda himself is also on another planet right now. He's been leaning pretty heavily on his slider recently. He's throwing it about 45% of the time in his past 5 starts, which has led to an absolute explosion. He has a 2.72 skill interactive ERA in that time with a 35% strikeout rate and a 4% walk rate. Those numbers are amazing, but then you add on the fact that he's allowing just a 22% hard hit rate. You can see why Kenta Maeda is very much worth it, despite the fact that Hendricks is facing the Pirates for tonight. It's also worth noting, that was a 5-start sample for Maeda. His almost no-hitter was 6 starts ago. So the best start he has made this entire year was not included in the sample. I'm not cherry picking. I'm just looking for when his pitch count or pitch mix changed. It changed after the no-hitter. So that game was not in this sample. And he still has a 35% strikeout rate and a 2.72 skill interactive ERA. he's just been legit for a month and a half now. It is worth noting that the matchups that Maeda has had in that time have been very favorable. That does include 2 games against the Tigers, but again, this is the best matchup he could possibly have. I think the one concern with Kenta is that the Tigers have seen him twice in the past few weeks, which means they've seen that slider a bunch. So it does put a slight dent in his profile for tonight. It's not enough to push me off of Maeda, but it is worth noting. I still have him number 1, but if you're looking for wiggle room or if you really value guys who are facing teams that have not seen them recently, then maybe you want to go with Hendricks. So let's talk about Hendricks here, because if you are worried about the Tigers being familiar with Kenta, you can just pivot to Hendricks. As mentioned last week on Friday, Hendricks is not a guy I use very often. I did use him there because there weren't a ton of strikeouts available on the slate. And outside of Kenta Maeda and Tyler Glasnow, that's true once again tonight. But Hendricks also has more upside than usual due to his matchup. He is facing the Pirates. And if the Tigers are the number 1 matchup in the league for a righty, the Pirates are pretty firmly second. They have a 61 WRC plus against righties, so 20 percentage points lower than the Tigers. They have a 26% strikeout rate, so they're still striking out a bunch, even if it's not as much as the Tigers. They don't get fly balls. They don't make much hard contact, and that means that Kyle Hendricks could legitimately throw a no-hitter tonight, and I wouldn't bat much of an eye. No-hitters are awesome. But, if he throws a no-hitter tonight, it's oh, okay, cool. We expected that to be within his range of outcomes. So if he throws a no-hitter, not that big of a shock. We've also seen Hendricks showing a bit more upside recently. He had 10 strikeouts last time out against the Twins. He had 7 the start before that. He's been throwing his curveball more often in his past 6 starts, and that curveball is more of a strikeout pitch for Hendricks than his other offerings, so that's a good thing for him. He has a 3% walk rate in that time with a 25% hard hit rate. Those are amazing numbers. And his strikeout rate is 23%. That's not great, but it's high enough to be viable when the matchup and everything else are so good. So Hendricks is awesome. That's valuable here. There are a couple of reasons I prefer Kenta Maeda. He has more strikeouts. He is at home. He is in a higher strikeout matchup. So that's why I have Kenta higher, but I will not push back on anyone who prefers Hendricks. I think both are elite level pitching options for tonight. So those are my top 2 guys. Again, we are going to discuss Tyler Glasnow and things to watch. And I would say those 3 guys are where you should be going at pitcher in. For me, it might be every lineup personally. I think I would not be surprised if I build out every lineup and it's just those 3 guys. But for the most part, they should be your 3 pitchers for tonight. We'll talk more about Glasnow and things to watch. But if you do want to dip down tonight, I think Nathan Eovaldi can work. The reason I'm not as high on Eovaldi is that the Red Sox have nothing to play for. The Twins and the Cubs are both trying to win their division, so I'd expect that Maeda and Hendricks will have full leashes, and I can't guarantee that with Eovaldi. But he's pitching pretty well, and there is value in that. For the full season, Eovaldi has a 3.58 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 25% with a 3% walk rate. He's getting ground balls, and that's key with the number of balls in play that he allows. Importantly, Eovaldi's looked good since coming off the injury list. He's had only 2 starts, but he's allowed just 5 hits across 8 innings. He has allowed 1 earned run compared to 11 strikeouts. His swinging strike rate there is 14.7%. So we've seen Eovaldi look really good in this time since he came back, which again is important because injuries do matter. We'll sometimes see guys come back and not have it. Eovaldi has. Eovaldi threw 76 pitches in his most recent start, so I think there's at least a path to him going 90 tonight. Again, that's why I'd rather spend up. I'd rather find the salary to get to the 3 big studs, but there is enough here to justify using Eovaldi. Eovaldi should pitch well while he's out there. The Orioles have just a 27% hard hit rate against righties, so they're scrappy, but they're not a team we need to avoid. If you wanted it down, Eovaldi works. I would just really, really try to stick to the top 3 guys for tonight because I think that they are definitively the top options on our list. Moving now to the stacking discussion, I am almost always hesitant to plug a stack in San Francisco, and it's especially true when it's a pitcher who is getting out of Coors Field. There are 2 major things working against the Giants for tonight if we're looking at the numbers of the opposing pitcher. But I kind of think we need to stack the Giants against Ryan Castellani. Castellani's peripherals are just a train wreck right now. He's been throwing his changeup less often in his past 5 outings, and It's a decently large sample, and in that decently large sample, he has just a 12% strikeout rate compared to a 16% walk rate. His skill interactive ERA, 7.05, and he's done all that while allowing hard contact 46% of the time. Now, it's worth noting that 4 of those outings have come at Coors Field, so we can't look at the ERA when it comes to judging Castellani, and his lone non-Coors start came against the Dodgers. So don't look at the ERA when it comes to Castellani. But the peripherals are so bad that I don't even really need to see the results. It's really, really hard to outperform your peripherals enough to make this viable with the way things are going right now. It also doesn't hurt that the Giants' offense is pretty solid against righties. They have a 117 WRC plus with a 39% fly ball rate. So it is very rare for me to stack San Francisco, to stack a team in San Francisco, that is. But it's colder on the East Coast. I mean, it's like in the 70s once again today. So it's not as terrible of a park for hitting as it was in July and August. The composition of the slate makes this the optimal way to go for me, and I'm good with following that. So the Giants are my top stack of the night. It's not something we'll say very often, and I feel kind of weird doing it, but I think for tonight, the black hole of offense that is San Francisco is viable for DFS for tonight. Moving on to our second stack, the Twins were a team we wanted to stack a lot early in the year, and they got hurt pretty much right away. So that allowed us to use pitchers facing them, guys like Shane Bieber, bench Kyle Hendricks. So we've been using pitchers against the Twins for a bit now, but they're back to being fully healthy. And I think, outside of Nelson Cruz being banged up, but I think that means we can stack them here against Casey Mize. We've had this discussion about Mize a couple of times so far this year. I still think the long-term outlook is great. Like, he's a young guy. You don't expect it to click right away. But for right now, he's just not fully there yet. And that allows us to stack against him. We're up to a 6-start sample on Mize in the big leagues, and both the results and the peripherals show that stacking against him is in play. He has a 6.08 ERA with a 5.00 skill interactive ERA. That comes with a 20% strikeout rate and a 10% walk rate. When you look at his numbers in AA last year, they kind of showed that he wasn't going to be a high strikeout pitcher right away, so this isn't a huge shock. The batted ball numbers are a lot better for Mize. He's allowing a 31% hard hit rate, which is better than average, but not a ton on the ground. It's a 43% ground ball rate, and he's also letting up a lot of barrels. So when he does let you launch it, he lets you launch it, and that's likely why the results have been so poor. Against this team, a few weeks ago, maybe Mize could have gotten by because they were so injured, but Josh Donaldson, Max Kepler, Mitch Garver, Byron Buxton have all come off the injured list, so they are back to being a really tough matchup. And with Mize's results and peripherals where they're at, I think that gives us the green light to buy into this Twins offense once again. So I'm not really sure what the lineup will look like here because they've used 3 different leadoff batters since Mitch Garver came off the injured list. But I bet that Byron Buxton will be batting somewhere near the top of the lineup again, and that makes me very happy. He had a home run once again last night. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing my Byron Buxton jersey right now because did have him in my lineup last night. And I think that it's pretty legit. When you look at his peripherals against righties this year, they're actually very DFS friendly. He has a 37% hard hit rate with a 50% fly ball rate, and his strikeout rate is manageable at 25%. So my dreams are coming true here. I can recommend Byron Buxton in DFS without feeling like it being a total donkey. He doesn't have to be your favorite stud here because obviously if Nelson Cruz comes back, we'll prefer him. I would go Max Kepler above Byron Buxton, but Buxton is in the same mix to me as guys like Eddie Rosario and guys like that, which is super exciting for me to finally say with a straight face, I can adore him as a real-world player and as a DFS player as well. This is a great day. So it's Byron Buxton Day here on the FanDuel Podcast Network, and we're just going to go all in on this guy for tonight and stack his teammates with the Twins against Casey Mize. For me, the third stack is going to be the Rays. Michael Wacha's peripherals, since coming off the injured list, are not too bad. He's made 4 appearances, all of 60 or more pitches. He's got a 3.89 skill interactive ERA, which is pretty solid. But he profiles as being someone who is going to underperform those peripherals, which means we have the leeway to stack the Rays here. And the big reason for that is the batted ball numbers against Wacha. Sometimes skill interactive ERA doesn't do a good enough job of capturing the extremes, and Wacha might be one of the guys, not at an extreme, but who underperforms his peripherals just because the batted ball numbers are where they are at. The ground ball rate for Wacha is down to 37%. 43% of the balls in play against him have had an exit velocity of 43% or higher. And when you combine high exit velocity with a low ground ball rate, that's a bad combination, and you're going to let up fly balls in hard contact. That's what's led to his 6.75 ERA for the full season. And things have not been better for Wacha since he came back. He's let up 11 earned runs across 14 innings pitched. He gets the good skill interactive ERA because he doesn't walk that many guys and because he can get some strikeouts, and the Rays are very willing to strike out. But they also will make hard contact. They'll put the ball in the air. So I'd expect them to put a lot of balls in play tonight, and they should be solid when they do. And that's enough for me to stack the Rays, even if Wacha does have some decent peripherals. So for me, tonight, the Rays are the number 3 stack behind the Giants and the Twins. 2 recent call-ups here are interesting for the Rays. They've been having Randy Arozarena batting high in the order, even against righties. He was initially someone who I expected to play only against lefties, but he's occasionally hit second, third, or fourth against righties. He's $2,900. I like the power number, so Arozarena definitely works for me. Nate Lowe's salary is there too at $2,900. Lau always trips me up. Nate Lowe is $2,900 as well. Peripherals show some signs for concerns against righties, but it's in a small sample. The results have been good, so I'm willing to believe those there. Yoshi Tsutsugo, $2,800, puts the ball in the air a bunch, so I would use Arozarena, Lowe, and Tsutsugo in order to give yourself the flexibility to get to Brandon Lau for tonight, and he's always a fun option. So use the value plays to get to Lau, and I think that makes the Rays a fun option for tonight. Things to watch, as mentioned, didn't get to go through Tyler Glasnow in the pitching section, but he is another guy who I would rank near the top in DFS for tonight because he has elite numbers this year. For the full season, Glasnow has a 3.06 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 38%. Now, on most slates, we are going to rank that at the top of our list because I love that strikeout rate. He's just not as good of a matchup as Maeda and Hendricks have. He's facing the Mets, and the Mets against righties have a 120 WRC plus with a 22% strikeout rate. So I think if you're looking at about this from playing things straight up, take the path of least resistance, go Maeda, go Hendricks. But for tournaments, I do like Glasnow. I'm guessing others will flock to the good matchups. So Glasnow is a good tourney option if you want to pivot. And I think that is something I will be doing for tonight, even though straight up, I do prefer Maeda and Hendricks. Glasnow is very interesting. If you have just one bullet, I would be tempted to go with him. Be either him or Maeda for me in that scenario. Both sides of the Royals-Cardinals game are at least interesting for stacking. The Cardinals are facing Danny Duffy. He has been slowly increasing the usage on both his changeups and his changeup and his slider this year. He's got 5 starts doing that, and it's just a 5.35 skill interactive ERA. He's let up a lot of home runs, and the Cardinals do have some guys who can bop. So I'd say, although they're inconsistent, I think they're worth stacking. The inconsistency is the reason why I put them outside of the top 3 stacks, but they're a solid number 4, and I think the Royals are a decent number 5. They get Carlos Martinez, and Martinez has had struggles since coming off the injured list. Even against middling teams, like last week he faced Pittsburgh, he had 4 walks compared to 1 strikeout over 3 2/3 innings. That's a team that I said I would not be shocked if Kyle Hendricks no hits tonight, and Martinez struggled against them. And Pittsburgh is even worse than Kansas City. So I think those 2 teams are both options. I just don't like them as much as the others. So I think to me, it's a pretty clear night where I want to load up on the high-salaried pitchers, start things off there, and then filter through the stacks. But I think tonight is a good night to keep things tight. For me, probably just those 3 pitchers, and then switching things up within my stacks in order to get my differentiation. That is all the time that we have for today here on the Solo Shop, but do not forget we are back here at 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope pages to break down tonight's slate. We'll have lineups out then for a lot of teams. We can go through some value plays and any adjustments that may need to be made after what we see additional research is done, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure you come back 4 p.m. on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope pages and subscribe there to get notifications as we go live. Also, do not forget to check out our PGA DFS preview for the Corrales Punta Cana, a very interesting field, to say the least, but I think that can lead to some fun stuff for DFS too. So check that out with myself and Brandon Gadula. Our Week 2 recap podcast already posted as well. Week 3 preview coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. on YouTube and later on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you have questions for me before the 4 p.m. stream, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.